Well, for more on how Peru may recover economically from the pandemic, I'm joined by Remi Piet, Senior Partner at Embellie Advisory and a Research Associate at the University of Miami. Welcome back to the show.
It's a pleasure.
So as we saw, different countries tried strict lockdowns with varying levels of success. Talk about Peru's approach with the lockdown and how that's impacted infection rates.
Well, Peru is one of the countries that has been most severely hit by COVID-19. I mean, the first wave was first Ecuador, and then Peru and Brazil, the two countries in Latin America that have seen the highest numbers of cases. As a result, the decisions were taken to completely, close frontiers and have a lockdown, a series of measures of lockdown to try to prevent, the diffusion of the virus. But obviously, we're seeing now the impact, obviously, of these pandemics on the Peruvian economy, and even in terms of political stability, with a series of recent news that again show a lack of stability in Peru, despite some very strong fundamentals in the economy, such as the mining industry or infrastructure and others, which have some potential to rebound fairly quickly, though.
As you mentioned, the country has been hit with this double whammy. You have the virus, you have 6 million people unemployed. You mentioned the economy. What are some of the ways it's been hit the hardest?
Well, obviously, when you look at Peru, you think about mining. 60% of exports from Peru are mining industries, and usually, exporting to China or exporting to other regions. You also have, obviously, the tourism sector, which has been extremely hit by the closing of frontiers. We're still having in Peru measures of you can't travel to Peru and you can't fly out of Peru since the beginning of the outbreak of COVID-19. It's not the case in Brazil. It's not the case in the U.S. in most countries in the world. But Peru is on a severe lockdown because of the number of cases and the capacity from political authorities to be able to limit this outbreak. It's not so much the guilt and caused by Martin Vizcarra himself, who's tried to, despite not being elected, as the vice president that stepped in when Kuczynski had to resign. He actually did a fairly good job at on the administration level. But there's a series of antagonism between regional actors and national actors. You had the governor of Arequipa, for example, at one point who prevented some mining companies, Southern Copper, to bring respiratory units for hospitals. So all these dysfunction on the political level, unfortunately, has hampered the capacity of Peru to rebound from the coronavirus crisis.
Right.
But I think that down the road it will be still a country that you should count on because of the strength of the mining industry and other industries in the country.
So then as we look at Latin America as a whole, how long do you think it's going to take for the region to recover, especially from the economic fallout, and how even will that recovery be?
So obviously you have to look, in different countries in details. They're not all. Some are all producers, other mining, mineral producers. You have to look at other aspects of the economy. But I would say countries such as Peru, Colombia, and Brazil, which has done a series of structural reform with Paulo Guedes, will be the ones, rebounding fairly more aggressively and with the capacity to rebound on the development of the mining industry in Peru, a series of infrastructure and the industry, automotive industry in Brazil, or in Colombia, a series of interesting sectors also that you can invest in, especially, again, I'm saying minerals, but new technology is also interesting in Colombia. So those countries actually do rely on well-trained populations. So it's not as in other countries, maybe in Africa or in Western Asia, where there would be problems to be able to reactivate the economy. The human capital is there. There are some raw material industries that are actually fairly strong, unfortunately not developing too much value for the country itself.
Right.
But they are a backbone of the economy that will actually share optimism on the future of Peru and other Latin American economy in a few months coming.
Now, we did see that before the pandemic, millions of families across the region were already struggling with poverty, and now it's pushing countless others into extreme poverty. How are governments approaching this issue?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I traveled last year almost every week to Latin America in different countries, and I've seen the level of poverty that is there, further emphasized by migration out of Venezuela, which for obviously issues that link to Venezuela has led to several millions of people displaced on the road, and further hampering the capacity of Latin American countries to strengthen their institutions and strengthen the societal links between different levels of populations. And this is obviously a cradle where, when the pandemics arrive, even further complicated to try to, control the spread of a virus and then rebound from it. But actually, if and that's the big if in the case of Peru, this, staggering incapacity to have stability at the national level in terms of, politicians. The last 4 presidents in Peru are actually in jail because of corruption charges, somewhat linked to the Odebrecht scandal from a few years ago. And now you're having Vizcarra also facing a scandal specifically right now with some, recordings. But that you need to have stability in this country because there are the capacities for this country with the human capital, as I was saying, a series of well-trained, executives and key companies that the country could rebound in the next few months.
All right. Well, thank